And welcome to another episode of the Trucking Risk and Insurance Podcast, where this week's guest, Mr. Bruce Outridge of the Lead Pedal Radio, joins us, and we're talking about Driver Inc., the model of the Driver Inc. Down in the show notes below, we have a link to the Lead Pedal Radio apps. So if you want to download the Lead Pedal Radio or any of Bruce's content, that's how to do it. Click on the link down below and connect with Bruce. So with that, let's get on with the show.
What the heck is that? The heck is that truck going by?
Welcome to another episode of the Dawg on It. No, we'll start that over again.
No, it's not that.
Dawg on it. What the heck show is this anyway?
Welcome to another episode of the Trucking Risk and Insurance Podcast, where John Farquhar and I host this week Mr. Bruce Outridge of the Lead Pedal. Here, hey, Bruce, welcome to the show.
I know.
Here.
You shouldn't give him so many buttons.
There, we threw confetti for you too, Bruce. There you go.
Oh, that's nice. Oh, wow. What was that truck that I saw drive by? That was a delivery driver?
That was a distracted driver.
There goes the truck.
Oh.
And this week we're talking about Driver Inc.
Oh. I've heard of that before.
All right, so Bruce, there was a protest or something about Driver Inc. What was it you and John were just talking about?
Drivers were protesting in Brampton because they were not getting paid or were delayed on their paid. I'm not sure. There was a number of issues there. And those drivers apparently, if I understood that right, were signed up as what we call Driver Inc. employees. So the company thought they were self-employed. Drivers thought they were self-employed till they wanted to be paid, and then they realized they were employed and they were looking for back pay.
All right, so John, do you want to answer the question of what the heck is Driver Inc.? So we can set this up.
This is a fun category. I know.
Here we go.
About this. Here we go. That's right. We're about to open up a can of worms. So
I'm glad it's on your show.
Yeah, exactly. So Driver Inc. is kind of what the short form is, Driver Incorporated. So it's a driver who, instead of being an employee, is working as a contractor, subcontractor, and has incorporated himself or herself, so that therefore, instead of being on payroll, they would collect all the proceeds of their task, and then they would be responsible for paying their taxes, their deductions that are required, CPP and federal income tax, provincial income tax, and whatnot. But there are several, I don't want to say loopholes, but there's several dips in the program that drivers are utilizing to get out of their responsibilities. And unfortunately, we don't really have the enforcement in place to catch these guys. And they are, to an extent, carriers are wanting to utilize these as well to kind of, circumvent their responsibilities as well.
Bruce?
Yeah, I think it's more the employers getting out of paying than the drivers getting out of paying, because the drivers aren't really. Yeah. The drivers don't think they have to pay anything. That's the problem.
Yeah, well, and so I'm an employer. I have two employees in my company, myself and my wife, and I have to submit the payroll deductions on behalf of my company. So I pay federal income tax, provincial income tax, and CPP. And as part of my taxes, that goes also towards, benefiting my area where I live, health taxes, looking after different things that government needs the money for. Yeah. Carriers, certain carriers, not all carriers, are, trying to, again, circumvent their responsibility. And when they have a payroll employee, there is a requirement that they will take from the employee the federal tax, the provincial tax, submit on their behalf. Same thing with the CPP, but the employer must also contribute an equal amount plus 0.1%, I believe, of CPP. And then there's unemployment insurance, which the employer has to submit on behalf of the employee. So there are these deductions that are responsible from the employee, but plus the employer. And, by using Driver Inc., meh, they say, I don't have to deal with this. I just make the employee, the Driver Inc. person, deal with it.
So,
Right.
Bruce,
Yes, sir.
Is there an advantage?
No, there's no advantage. In fact, there's less advantage because the way they do the Driver Inc. To be properly in business, basically Driver Inc., they're running them as if they're owner-operators. They're not owner-operators. They don't own the truck. They're not like you or I where we have multiple customers that we go to. They go to the same spot every day. They work for the same company. They drive the same truck. Company gives them all. I did all of this when I was a supervisor. If you do the exercise, they are really employees. They are not. They might be part-time employees if they're not working every day, but if they're 20 hours a week or more, they are employees of the company, unless they are bringing the tools of the trade with them to work, which would be, i.e., a truck.
Yeah. Hold on, Bruce. I bring a pencil. I bring a pen. I bring my safety shoes. I bring a clipboard. I bring my vest, my safety vest. Isn't that tools of the trade?
That might be that'll get you on the dock. It won't get any freight down the road, though.
Yeah, it's about risk is where it comes in. Is how much risk are you taking on? And a driver takes on way less risk than an owner operator would. Yeah. So the employer in this case has most of the risk because they have to provide the vehicle, the equipment, the freight. They pay for the fuel, the insurance of the vehicle, and stuff along that line. Whereas the driver, he just brings what you said: pencil, clipboard, gloves, and whatnot. And his chance of losing that, due to the fact that, I lost a load, I'm not going to make any money. Well, their risk is a lot less because, the carrier is still responsible for that employee or that driver.
Right. So if they don't have the tool of the trade, they're not a proper owner operator. They're much like what we call these kind of like an inside sales, like a sales rep who might write off an officer or whatever, but you can't write off a lot. You have to you get kind of minimal write-offs. So they really don't have any benefit for them. They have no CPP or anything because they're not paying into that. Right. And down the road, if you and I build a client, the client could say, we're not paying you for 45, 60 days, whatever it is. We can't sue them or anything. That's part of business. But these guys are thinking they're owed back pay because they were thinking they're owner operators or they're thinking they're employees and they're not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, and this is, it's the scourge of our industry, in my opinion.
Yes.
But not that I want to, and the poor drivers get abused.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you think of the cultures that are predominantly getting into this, they're used to being in business. This is the attraction for them, is they will be in business for themselves. If you go to South Asia, a lot of people work for themselves. You don't see, they don't work at like a Coca-Cola or somebody like the way that we have here. They don't have those kind of jobs for the most part. So they're all very self-employed, very entrepreneurial, which is fine. That's actually a good thing to have, but it's not working properly in the business model we have for transportation right now.
Right.
So
no,
we need to do something.
I wonder how many of the companies, because we all know that a company is supposed to issue a T4A slip. I wonder how many of the companies that use the Driver Inc. model actually issue the T4A slip or just pay them as contractors, in which case, those... Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, one of the issues is that a driver from a Driver Inc. model doesn't issue an invoice. So how do you actually keep track of how much money you made? Therefore, the T4A is what's important here. So in a number of clients that I've been working with, one of the things that we've talked about is the Driver Inc. model. And I do a lot of work with the South Asian community. And interesting enough, a lot of them, I would say 90% of the folks I'm dealing with are issuing T4As because they've gotten burned in the past, and they've realized this is the only way to protect themselves, to show how much money's being generated with this particular driver. And interesting enough, I just met with a number of them here over the last couple of weeks, and they're wanting to get rid of the Driver Inc. model because it's not helping them. They're being targeted, and they don't want this. But the problem is some of these drivers are going, well, if you don't do Driver Inc., I don't want to drive for you, and I'll go somewhere else. So now you got a carrier that's going, I need drivers. I'm willing to pay as an employee, but these guys won't work as an employee because they think they can skirt the issue better.
Yeah,
Well,
And
go ahead, Bruce. Whose fault is this?
well, I don't know if it's a fault of anybody. I think it's a kind of a gradual thing that happened, and nobody really paid attention to it in industry. And it really depends on which side you are analyzing or investigating to decide whether they're right or wrong. So they both sides think they're right. That's the problem.
Yeah.
I have talked to fleet owners that they work within a fleet and they own like 20 trucks within a fleet. And I brought this up. I said, you know what? It's not illegal what you're doing. He says, oh, we've been investigating. There's been no problem. Because if you investigate from an owner-operator standpoint, they just say, yeah, there's 20 trucks there. I've got 20 owner-operators. They don't look any further. It's not until they start investigating the drivers, and the drivers go, well, wait a minute. No, I'm an employee. And they say, no, you're not. You haven't paid into anything, or you're not getting. That's what's starting to happen. The drivers are now going, wait a minute, we're not getting paid. What's this model you were talking about? Because to be honest with you, they don't know what Driver Inc. is. You know, I don't blame the drivers. The drivers don't understand what they're going, I want to work here. I want to make the most money. I had this at a training session not too long ago. I had a driver who's working for one of the top carriers in Canada right now. They're moving him up from warehouse into a truck. And he's going, I'm going to work here for a little while, and then I'm going to go and run highway under this Driver Inc. model. And we had a long discussion about what are you doing? Why would you do that? And he's going, oh, no, I can make more money over here because he's got a friend doing it. I go, you might have a friend doing it. We all probably have a friend doing it. But that doesn't mean it's legal. You know, so hopefully I opened his eyes enough that he's going to go back and look at this. But if they don't get the proper education about it and understand where it's wrong and where it's right, we've seen this at all of the events now for recruiting, where people are going to one table and they say, do you do the Driver Inc. model? And they say no, and they move to another table. They're not even asking anymore. They don't have the education on what that Driver Inc. model is. Now, they just want to be in business for themselves. I get that. We're in business for ourselves. I get that. I get that drive. But they don't understand what they're doing is not the right way across the board. Right. So there's a lot of education needs to go on.
Yeah, I think one of the big problems is they see that paycheck every week and there's no deductions, right? And then they see their buddy's paycheck who's on payroll, and they're going, wow, you got all those deductions. I don't want that. I don't want that. Yeah. But they don't realize that come tax time, you've got to pay up those deductions. And I'll bet you 10 to 1, most of them don't have that money put aside for when it comes time, when the tax man comes knocking on the door and saying, hey, you now owe.
Yeah.
And so now let's pass the buck a little bit back to Revenue Canada to say, Revenue Canada, why aren't you dealing with this at that time? Why aren't you getting after these guys and going, hey, you got to pay. You got to pay.
Yeah. I don't know where they go. Go ahead, Chris.
Bruce, when you were saying the driver's been investigated in the past, doesn't it depend on who investigated them? Like, you know, if it was CRA, if it was workers' comp, because I know a lot of carriers that say, well, Driver Inc. is legal because I pay workers' comp.
Workers' comp is like an insurance piece, right?
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with business of being in business or not. It's it's to protect you should something happen.
Well, also workers' comp is an Ontario thing. And CRA, of course, is a federal item. So one's provincial, one's federal. We're really mixing up the stuff. You know, there's Bruce, skill testing question, because you alluded to this earlier.
A question. Oh, he smokes on an interview. the heck's going on here?
I know, it's got really low standards. This is the Lead Pedal Radio Show.
No, it's not. No, if you're going to get email, it's not the Lead Pedal. Lead Pedal is just I'm here. You're going to send all email to the what is it called?
Trucking risk and insurance.
I was going to say safety dog.
Yeah.
I know the truck's going to go by again.
Okay, the truck's going by now. The trucking risk and insurance. Okay.
Oh, boy, he's really difficult, Chris. That's the first we really had to tell somebody where they're at.
Back in
I called it safety dog for so long I forget what show we're on now.
hey, back in the good old days when I was a youngin.
Oh, wow, we're going back.
Yeah. Well, what the heck was it? On Truck. On Truck is the Ontario Trucking Association used to sell a book that said, "Are you an employee or an owner operator?"
Yeah.
And it had 4 questions. 4. See, put my fingers up. Do you remember these are CRA questions asking whether you're self-employed, how to test yourself. You mentioned one of them already, the 20 hours a week.
Yeah. So I've never seen that book. So being asked a question based on something you haven't seen, but let's try it out. So you said there's 4. First of all, it's about the number of hours you work at one place. 2, do you have more than one customer? Do you have multiple customers? I always tell people you got to have at least 3. Do you bring the tools to the trade? So the majority of the tools, not just your vest and your pencil, but like truck and if you're a carpenter, would you bring their saw, whatever it is, right? So it's the same. I don't know if I was 3, right? 4. Yeah. What was the 4th one? I don't know what the 4th one is. Do you pay your own taxes?
Well,
John
alluded to it. Is there a chance of profit or loss?
Yeah.
Right.
And as a Driver Inc., there's no loss because as an owner operator, you can blow your engine up and be out. I don't know how much a new engine is nowadays, 20, 30, 40.
Yeah.
Oh, easily. Yep.
But,
yep.
Anyways, as a Driver Inc., there's no chance of loss. So I think you hit them all. Number of customers, number of hours, who's responsible for the customers, that type of thing. But I think the biggest one is profit or loss.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's been blended over the years, right? Look at the way owner operators. We've had this thing about owner operators as well.
Yep.
Do they show as employees? There's a lot of blends, right? Companies take care of everything for the owner operator. Everything comes off the statement. They even do the training for them, the safety training, which is not supposed to happen. You guys know that. You got owner operators in the class. Owner operators are supposed to keep up on that. Companies do it to make sure that it's been done, but really they shouldn't. They're blending the lines. It's other than the guy owning the truck. If he didn't own the truck, he'd be in that Driver Inc. model like everybody else.
Well, and I've heard by strict definition, owner operators don't actually meet the self-employed model either. Right. But CRAs let that go for years because they only have one customer.
Yeah.
And the name on the door says the trucking company.
Yep.
Right. And that's all tied in with the with where they're allowed to go, right? With the you know what I'm talking about.
I was going to say we're listening to.
I'm tongue-tied with the authority. I was trying to think of what's the name. I go.
Are you a dependent owner operator or an independent owner operator? And I think of an independent owner operator. One guy got his own operating authority, his insurance and whatnot, and away you go. Whereas a dependent owner operator, in my mind, works for a carrier, gets all his stuff from the carrier, and as Bruce alluded to, everything comes off my statement. I buy my fuel through the carrier. I get my work done at the carrier shop, and I buy tires from because hey, there's advantages. There's price advantages. So why wouldn't I take advantage of that? But really, I'm bound to that carrier, so I'm really not independent.
Yeah, but at least they have the right to refuse work too. Not that they should, but they do.
Yes.
Right. So I can say I'm not going to work this week. And the risk is now mine to still pay for the truck. So there's a little bit there. They need to clean that up because, and I am not disagreeing. I'm disagreeing with the driver because I always believe in a level playing field.
Yep.
But I'm not disagreeing that we need to maybe start looking at some other model that fits there. And I don't know what that might be, but obviously it's something that people are interested in. If you look at the way the carriers, you guys were both at the same Transrep event that I was, this is what they're talking about. There's carriers out there that are looking at guys like myself. We're going, yeah, you're almost 60 years of age. Would you come work with us for 1 or 2 weeks of the month? And that was said multiple times in that event. People are looking at getting creative because it's very hard to get somebody to be. So yeah, open your own driver service and don't knock yourself off.
Very much so. Well, it'll be interesting. We've all heard of AB 5, which is the California law that's messing right now about the independent owner operator versus dependent owner operator, and it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that from the U.S. because that could set a precedent across the U.S. and it could flow right into Canada.
And what happens to the guys that cross the border? As soon as the U.S. does something, you fall under their jurisdiction. So an owner-operator goes from here into California and is now falling into a different, I don't know, it's going to be pretty messy. So, CRA and WSIB, they all said they're getting on the same track. Then COVID hit. I don't know. They said they're going to do all this education. I haven't seen anything since other than a couple events that I've been to about it. So I'm not sure what their plan is or what it takes to roll it out, but holy smokes, I've been talking about it more than they have.
Well, there's an event coming up in December, and I'm sure Bruce is much aware of it. It's the Fleet Safety Council joint provincial event, and there's supposed to be somebody from ECRC there, and one of the topics is Driver Inc. So it'll be curious to see what they've got to say there. But you're right. They were supposed to, make some tracks on this, and I think they forgot to lay the tracks before they move forward. So,
that's a typical government way.
Before you carry on, Mr. John, what the heck is ECRC or whatever it is that you just acronym that you said?
Oh, great. I knew you were going to ask that question.
We can't use acronyms. Not everybody knows.
It's employment registration, employment. It's personnel services for the government. It's ESDC, sorry.
And it is I'm just trying to figure it out right now. And geez, look at that. There's an acronym, but there's no for. It's Employment Services and DC something.
I'm trying to look up her name, see if I had it in my address book here.
Yeah.
Because she's part of our chapter. She's part of our chapter.
Yes. Okay.
Or at least one of them are anyway. But
okay. So is this federal or provincial?
Federal. This is federal. Yep. This kind of replaced the Labor Canada, I think, is what it was. They renamed this ESDC, and it's it replaces the Canadian arm of Labor Canada.
Yeah.
Well, Labor Canada is still around, right?
Right, but this is now they've kind of combined these two departments to oversee a lot more labor issues.
Yeah.
Okay, so Bruce, what happens with Driver Inc? How does it create an unlevel playing field? Because that's what you talked about earlier.
Well, the drivers seem to be paid more than a driver over at company Y that's not on the Driver Inc model. So the drivers think they're making more money. The company is able to undercut contracts and stuff because they're not paying as much money. So they can say, hey, we can haul it for a lower fee. I believe that's what I've been hearing is the major problem.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
exactly.
Unfortunately, when the driver gets to be my age of the golden years, yay, retirement, well, I wonder about CPP. Because if he works that long in it, he hasn't paid into it.
Yep. You're going to burn. You're going to lose. That's for sure. Yep.
So I always tell...
ESDC stands for Employment and Social Development Canada. And they oversee the Employment Insurance, Canada Pension Plan, Old Age Security, Guaranteed Income Supplement, your social insurance numbers, Veterans Affairs Canada, and also passport services.
So, John, I'm interested to find out how are the companies battling. You say a lot of the companies are trying to get away from this model. What are they doing to either educate their employees or get away from the model? Like, what are they doing?
Not much, unfortunately, other than saying, no, I want you to be an employee. But as soon as the driver pushes back and says, no, I'm either Driver Inc. or I'm out the door. Okay, fine. All right. That's what you want. Yeah. They're not making a hard line in the sand, and they're not putting their foot down. because they're afraid of losing drivers. That's the big problem. If they can coerce you or not coerce you, I shouldn't use that word because that's not the right term, but if they can help you understand that the better role is to be on payroll, that you'll have protections and you'll do better overall because, and they understand this. So if you're as an employee, you'll get stat holidays paid. You get vacation time. You get overtime pay over 60, 60 hours. So there's other benefits of what it is. And then you have the write-offs, that you're allowed to have. Yep. And in the end, if you do it properly as an employee, you'll actually make more money in the end than you will as Driver Inc. By the time you do your taxes and write-offs and whatnot, as Driver Inc., you're going to lose your deductions, of course, but you're not going to get paid stat holidays. You're not going to get vacation days. You're not going to get sick days that you're allowed. So, so they're not. I don't think they're doing a good enough job in that fashion to educate the drivers thoroughly. But even at that, some drivers are not interested.
And Bruce, if I'm getting paid by the mile, John mentioned overtime. Am I going to get overtime if I'm getting paid by the mile and I work 70 hours this week?
No, I don't know anybody that's gotten paid overtime in trucking for doing much of that anyway.
You're supposed to, but yeah.
I don't know anybody that's done that.
I don't know. The hours of service says I can work 70 and 7 in Canada.
Right.
Therefore, what's this overtime stuff you're talking about? And, and again, this is one of the flaws of trying to convince people to move away from Driver Inc. if they're not following. Now that company's not following the flipping law either.
Yeah. So the company has to be viable for this. The company has to be liable if they hire on knowing, like if the driver says no, I want to be Driver Inc. I'm sorry, if you just want to fill the seats, then you should be. What are they doing to the company about this? Like, why are they not being fined or whatever for this or taken off? Take the truck off the road. Okay, there you go.
I can answer that question.
Nothing.
Labor Canada does not have any teeth. They don't have any agents. They don't have anybody else that goes out and does these audits. The Ministry of Labor for Ontario or any province, they have the agents. They have the people that go out. But as soon as they walk into a facility that's federally regulated, they go, oh, sorry, my bad. Close the door and leave. But there's no agents on the Canadian side. I've heard this now for about a year that Labor Canada or ESDC is supposed to be getting agents so that way they can go out, they can do proper audits, they can lay fines, they can lay sanctions and whatnot. But until then, there's no enforcement. Who cares?
Yeah. So how are we going to fix it? Let's fix it. We got half an hour. Let's go. What are we going to do?
This is a half-hour show. We've already been for like 27 minutes.
Okay, we got 3 minutes. I don't know.
We got 3 minutes now. Okay, Bruce, how are you going to fix it?
I don't know how I'm going to fix it, but I think we need to figure out a model where people are kind of self-employed. I know in the taxi industry that they rent the vehicle. So even if they go in for the day, they rent the car for the day. If you think of hairstylists, they rent their chair from whatever salon they're on. Maybe some kind of a model like that where you're kind of renting. I guess that's kind of like our lease program we have, but maybe something where you're not necessarily paying the fuel and all of that kind of stuff, or it's going to have to be different than the owner-operator model. But
you're taking on a certain amount of risk.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do want to be self-employed and be able to manage their time and say, I'm working today, I'm not working today. We don't, but how do you do that, right? And then, of course, from the insurance standpoint, so these people who are Driver Inc., what insurance do they have? Someone, Rita, my co-host on my show, keeps asking, what's the insurance? Like if they're Driver Inc. and they get into an accident, who's at fault?
Doesn't matter. They are as far as the insurance company is concerned, they are an extension of the company. So whether you are an owner-operator, Driver Inc., a legitimate driver, as long as the company has qualified you to operate that vehicle, you are covered under the policy. No ifs, ands, or buts. So from an automotive or automobile insurance aspect, there's nothing. It doesn't matter. Where it bothers the insurance companies is the fact that it's obviously going to have an effect on the company culture. So if the company culture is not good and it's not in a positive manner, and you are shortchanging or kind of shucking your responsibilities here, where else are you doing it? And that becomes a moral hazard.
Because weren't some companies charging back the employees for insurance incidents where they have a problem?
Oh God, yes,
Oh, yeah.
like a deductible. Yeah, they're taking deductible charges to say, I've heard some people say, well, if you get in a wreck, I'm going to charge you $500 for deductible. I pay $5,000, but you're going to pay $500. And drivers are not aware of this, and technically that's illegal. You can't deduct from an employee's wages something that they're not aware of and haven't signed for.
But hold it. This is Driver Inc. And I know one company that deducts $5,000 deductible.
Yep. And it's illegal.
Why is it illegal?
Because under Revenue
if I'm
Canada,
self-employed, I'm self-employed. I'm not an employee.
Yeah, so it's the definition of an employee. That's the problem. Yeah, it becomes the definition of an employee. And under the definition of employee, you cannot deduct from their wages. That's why a lot of times the best way to go is to create like an incentive program.
Sorry, Bruce, under Driver Inc., is he an employee?
Right now, it is the way that Driver Inc. sits, yeah. They actually are. They're pretending like they're not, but they actually are employees.
Yeah.
But if I'm not deducting CPP and withholding income tax, how is he an employee?
Doesn't matter. You give him the truck to drive every day. You dispatch him. He goes to work for you for 60, 70 hours a week. He doesn't get a choice whether he takes days off or whatever, blah, 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 going down the road. That's an employee.
Don't get to turn down the loads or anything like that, the runs you want to take, because
and this is where the Driver Inc. model is so kerfluffled.
Yes.
Because I would argue that as long as you're incorporated, and if I'm not withholding all the taxes, it's like me paying a plumber.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Except for, as you mentioned earlier, a plumber brings tools of the trade, which Driver Inc. doesn't bring tools of the trade.
Yeah.
The problem is nobody's flipping auditing these companies.
No,
that's right.
No, they're not.
Right.
That's
so one way to stop this would be to put a time limit on it, right? So you we're all consultants in this. So we all have gone and worked for companies, and let's say we spend a month at that company and we're gonna help them get through an audit or whatever the process is. But after a month, we're done. Like our contract is for a month, right? Mm-hmm. We don't go work for them for a whole year and never leave, without having more than one customer. I always tell people, you got to show at least 3 customers. You got to show you have at least 3 different customers that you can go to at any time. You want to be your own Driver Inc. driver service? Go get 3 jobs, work for one guy Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I don't, whatever you want to do. But you've got to be incorporated yourself, your business. If I work for a trucking company, I'm there as my own company, subcontracted to them. I'm not there as an employee of theirs. So the rules have to get very clear, and that education has to get out to the drivers who think that they're getting paid more or paid better. And maybe there is that third model we got to put in there where people can go, okay, I want that model because it kind of gives me in between owning a truck. Not everybody wants to go buy a truck. I get that. And maybe there's owner-operators. There's owner-operator fleets where maybe I want to contract to those owner-operators and say, you know what, I'm a spare guy. You guys need someone for holidays, call me. I'm, work 2 weeks here, 3 weeks there. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm my own business and working contract with them.
There's actually a term there Revenue Canada uses called PSB. It's a personal service business.
Yeah.
So, and they can actually do some of that. And there are particular caveats and lines that have to be drawn. But again, back to there's no education, there's no enforcement, there's no auditing. So the lines get very gray very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this whole Driver Inc. model, I would agree with you guys, is not the way to do it. They are employees by every measurement.
Yep.
But, and
So if they're contracted, why are they out there protesting about back pay? They're not owed any back pay.
Well, yeah. The problem is they found a way to go, oh, hang on, I'm an employee. I'm entitled to this. You signed up as Driver Inc. You're not entitled to that. But,
that's right.
Unfortunately, again, back to what you guys were saying, there's no enforcement of it. So they're going to protest. And whoever the squeaky wheel gets the grease, they say.
Yeah. So where's all the contracts from these companies of when these people signed up? Is there a contract there saying you're signing up as Driver Inc.? Is there a process when you go to get incorporated? You have to register your company name and all of that. We've been through all of that. So where's all of that information when you're sitting at the side of the road going, I'm an employee? Where's all of that stuff? Why is the company going, no, here's what you guys signed up as?
Yeah.
No, I'm in total agreement. They're either owner operators or they're employees.
Yep.
There is no third model the way the law is structured currently.
No. Right.
However, there is a third model that is being used. And until somebody gets some bloody teeth, because OTA once said that there's over $1 billion in revenue that the federal government is not collecting because of this model.
Yep,
and
exactly.
Lord knows, coming out of COVID, do you think the government might want a little more money?
Yeah.
But I don't think they're willing to tackle this issue because of the amount of votes involved.
Yeah, and John would know more when it gets to the contract stage, right? I don't know how contracts work, but when the companies come in and they want to fill the seats so they can say, hey, we've got 100 trucks that can service your contract. Whereas if you can't get the drivers, you really don't have 100 trucks. Maybe you aren't eligible for that contract anymore. So
that's right.
It's about making they're filling the seats so they get the contract. They can underbid the contract to make sure they get the work, and that's taken away from the legitimate companies that are doing things right and all that.
Well, and it's funny because I'll kind of go back into a long time ago, probably when Chris was just wee high to an eat grass.
When his beard wasn't as long as yours.
Yeah, exactly. When I drove truck, I worked under the Driver Inc. model, but at that time,
here we go.
I didn't know it. There was a lot of us that did it, but I didn't know it. It was my family that had said, "Oh no, this is how you want to do it, and this is what you want to do." So I'm very familiar with what's going on. And then as I progressed into my careers and when I got out of trucking, became an employee and started to realize, holy crap, I missed out on all these great opportunities, better wages, deductions, benefits, not to say health benefits, but benefits as far as getting holiday pay, vacation pay, stat pay. I never got any of that before.
And your family. That's family. That's why you don't work for family, right there.
That's the worst problem.
They won't tell you all that stuff.
That's right. But these things that and I remember when I dinged a truck, that come out of my pay. But it was interesting to learn more of that as I grew along. I went, I've been down this road before.
And I disagree with one thing that you said earlier, John. I think both sides, depending on the company, are pushing it because it's much easier for the company to manage what they would call payroll when it's a Driver Inc. And it's much and the driver, it appears to the driver that they get paid more. Both are fallacy. The advantage is to the trucking company, I believe. And that's where the hammer needs to come down if the hammer is ever going to come down.
Well, I'm a big advocate. If you're a carrier and you're saying you don't want Driver Inc., then put your foot down. Put your foot down and make it happen, because there are lots of carriers out there that do not have any Driver Inc. All drivers are payroll and whatnot. Take your big guys, your Challenger, your Herbs and whatnot. They don't do Driver Inc. models. Simple as that. And they don't have driver issues.
I disagree. I know of one big company that has over 3,000 trucks, and they do Driver Inc.
Okay, that'll be one of the norm, or out of the norm. Can you say who it is?
Our guest. No, I'm not going to go down that.
Me? I don't have any trucks. Trucks.
I was going back to our guest.
I know of some company. I'm not naming anybody on here though.
Yeah.
That's not my role.
Well, no, that's and I agree with that.
Yeah, it's rampant in the industry. There's no doubt about it. But we're not going to fix it, unfortunately. This is where you need government to step in to create some enforcement and do something. Or carriers to go down the ethical road and put their foot down and say, no more, I'm not going to do this. If you really don't want it, then you'll do something about it.
Bruce?
Yeah, I agree, but I think it's really educating the drivers on, is it a benefit or not? They see it as a benefit because they see the higher pay model right now. So we need to do some education in the industry and let them know when is, we talking on it on shows like this is helpful. But we really got to, the people that probably need this the most are usually never in the room or never listening to the shows. Unfortunately,
usually that's right.
Yeah, it's like going to a recruiting event. They're all the top line recruiters in there. We already know that.
Yeah.
So how do we get that to the masses and make them understand and not look like we're just against them for whatever reason?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, we keep talking about it, and hopefully it'll get to a couple people and get to a couple more and a couple more.
Well, it's got to go into something like a safety meeting. It'll never be, but it's when you bring it up in a safety meeting and everybody goes, wait a minute, we're running that way. I know I've done that at training schools, and I go, do you guys know about claiming your meals? And some of them go, no, and they've been running for 10 years. And I go, that's worth about $6,000 a year to you.
Yeah.
And you haven't been claiming it for 10 years. That's $60,000. You've just basically not claimed from the government.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're doing really well.
A full year's worth of wages.
Yeah, that's about it, right?
Yep.
So stuff.
Bruce of the Lead Pedal Media Companies.
Yeah, it's still podcast, radio. It's just all together now. Too much stuff. So.
No, well, I'll promote the Lead Pedal Radio because I think that's an awesome show. And of course,
it is.
John and I happen to come on there every now and again.
Yeah, we hear you. We hear you Thursday mornings at 10 a.m.
Bruce, thanks for coming on.
You're welcome, guys.
It has been like 40 some odd minutes already.
Yeah, wow. I'm surprised we've closed it at that because I know we've gone. I know we've gone on longer.
Go on for hours.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Bruce Outridge of Lead Pedal Radio.